what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We are in Gillette Stadium, where we just finished talking to Patriots de facto general manager and current director of scouting, Eliot Wolf. Phil Perry alongside. We're going to parse through this pretty well, but the first two things that jumped out to me were non-draft related. First, that Eliot Wolf thinks that Lamar Jackson's already a Hall of Famer. He's not, okay? And that opinion right there makes everything else Eliot Wolf said suspect.
Oh, come on.
Additionally, Eliot Wolf, in response to a Nicole Yang question, we'll get further into this, saying that he doesn't understand the narrative of why the Patriots are not able to support a quarterback at this juncture, is, to me, blissfully ignorant, disingenuous, because if he really believes that the worst offense in football this year last year has improved enough in the past few months to say, hey, plunk that guy down, we're going to get after it right away, then he's barking up the wrong tree. Phil! How you doing?
Coming out hot. First of all, here's your list of quarterbacks with 2 MVPs. Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Johnny Unitas, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kurt Warner, Steve Young, Joe Montana, Joe Namath, all Hall of Famers. Number 2.
How many Super Bowls are in that group?
I don't care. That's not what we're talking about.
How many
Number
playoff
2
wins? More than one for each.
Number 2. I could understand it if Eliot Wolf said, listen, our roster does have holes, which he did acknowledge during today's press conference. He didn't say they were a complete roster. Our roster does have holes, but we are still comfortable with taking a quarterback because if we feel like the right guy is there, that position's so damn important we just can't pass. That's what I believe they feel behind closed doors, and that's what's been indicated to me. You can't wait at that position if you feel like the right guy is there. Did he go a little far to maybe show some support for guys in the locker room? Based on what you're saying, that they could start Chuck Secorifor at left tackle with a straight face and be just fine, and they could roll into a game tomorrow with the receivers they have and be just fine. I would disagree with those sentiments if that's what he's saying at the podium today. But I think he did acknowledge, listen, the more picks the better because we do have holes on this roster that we need to fill.
And that's why, to me, Cap, you're out. That's Jeff Capitasto, early edition.
Are we going to ignore him in real time?
Yeah. Sorry, Cap. But we'll get back to you. And that is ZZ Top, Lagrange for a ringtone. To scoff at the notion that Okorafor at left tackle is vastly different from Riley Reif and Calvin Anderson at right tackle last year, and proposing that with a straight face, and to go into the season with the wide receiver core you did with a straight face and say everything's going to be fine, to me that's indicative of the mindset not having changed enough to realize what your flaws are. But I don't want to go too far afield because this was a draft conversation that we had today. And what were your impressions about what the Patriots intend to do at number 3?
It sounds like they're going to be taking a quarterback at number 3 overall. He said on more than one occasion he feels as though this is a very deep draft class, and he feels as though it's a unique year in that regard. And he was even provided with specific examples by one Tommy Curran. If Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy were sitting there for you at 3, you wouldn't feel like you're settling for any of those guys. Is that fair to say? And
Cue the answer.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think you could open it up to some other names as well. I think it's a really unique year.
And when he upped the ante and said more than 3, I tried to squeeze in a Michael Penix. Now, he's not alleging a Michael Penix at 3, is he?
That's sort of how it sounded. It's sort of how it sounded. Now, I agree with you there. But for him to go out of his way to bring up, we wouldn't be settling for any of those 6 guys is sort of the vibe I got. That's not word for word what he said, but does that make you feel like somebody like Penix is a real option at number 3 overall? Because I don't. I don't
either.
Feel that way.
And I think that Eliot Wolf understands what's at stake for him, even though he says that he hasn't thought about it. He's de facto general manager for the team, and he is on an audition. I called it a trial. Probably not the greatest word, but be that as it may. It's a trial run.
Can I just mention one thing as it relates to the Penix conversation?
Sure.
He does seem to be generally aware of what a reach would be. And the entire world would consider Michael Penix at 3 overall, would consider that a reach. And the reason I bring that up is because I asked him about the 2018 draft and if his philosophy on drafting quarterbacks has changed at all since then, when he was a big proponent of the Browns, where he was working at the time. He was a big proponent of the Browns taking Baker Mayfield 1 overall. I said, has your philosophy changed? He said, no, not really. Lamar Jackson's a Hall of Famer. Let's get to the Hall of Famer conversation.
Obviously, Lamar Jackson's a Hall of Famer, and we didn't pick him. So that's not a great look. But also, if we had picked Lamar Jackson at 1, we might have had to pack our bags at that point too. So nothing's really changed. We're still looking for the good player. And I think in this situation, we're going to have the support that's needed for that quarterback if we draft one, whoever it is. We're going to have a situation where they're supported in every way possible to make them succeed.
Now, you were sitting in your seat steaming because he referenced Lamar Jackson as a Hall of Famer. You might have missed the second part of that answer, which was, had we taken Lamar Jackson, we might not have been there very long.
Right.
Indicating that we might have been fired because that would have been viewed as such a reach. I'm putting words in his mouth by saying that, but he obviously went 32 overall. He almost slipped out of the first round. And so he is, again, just big picture, taking a step back, he is generally aware of who the rest of the world considers top 5 picks and which players are not considered in that way.
How much posturing was Eliot Wolf doing in your mind today? Roll the open for business quote if you could.
We're open to anything, moving up, moving down. We're open for business in the first round and in every round. We have some holes we feel like we need to fill in the draft, and we're a draft and develop team. The more picks we have, the better. But if there's an opportunity to move up and strike, if the board kind of recommends it, then we won't be afraid to pull the trigger on that either.
So between open for business, ready to trade out, and there's 6 quarterbacks we'd be happy with, in essence, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say that, but intimated that. Between those two things, I think some of that is posturing to incite conversation from other teams. So they say they're good if they don't take any of those 4 at the top, and they'll be fine with Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Let's get on the phone. I really do think that a lot of this was, for Eliot Wolf saying this, he's putting at the end of the driveway a make me an offer, walk up to the door, knock on it, and we will talk about it. We want to hear what you have. I do, however, think the default is quarterback. And it has to be quarterback based upon his situation and his statements about the team being ready for it, which we'll get to in a second. Phil.
I agree with you there.
Posturing.
And he should be. He should be. Between now and Thursday night of the draft, you should be trying to drum up as much interest in that pick as possible, just to see if somebody gets nuts. And if there's a bit of a split there in the Patriots front office and coaching staff, then, okay, somebody's offering us 4 first-round picks and a starting left tackle. At that point, you have to consider that. So today, that should have been a part of his goals, is to make it very clear. We are open for business. Something Bill Belichick used to say every single year. And I think because he felt as though some teams were reluctant to make calls or call him specifically. And so that's the kind of message we would have heard any year, a Bill Belichick year included.
I'm going to get to a little bit more of the trade talk later because I find it fascinating to try and understand what – hit it now. The question that I asked Eliot Wolf, John Henry, Skull Crusher, about the machinations of trading down. And are you working on it right now?
We spend time on all those scenarios. When you're picking this high, fortunately, those teams that are interested are also doing that. So they'll reach out earlier than like when we're on the clock. So that makes it a little bit easier in this particular situation.
So they're on that. And, of course, if they're on that, they're passing on a quarterback. And that leads me to the conversation that Nicole Yang led Eliot into about the status of the roster. Nicole Yang asking, is this team good enough to support a quarterback? And I think it is an appropriate question because when the Patriots missed on Calvin Ridley and when they didn't sign any left tackle, my immediate feeling was when those players signed elsewhere, and there really wasn't a left tackle to sign.
Tyron Smith.
Yeah, but beat up. Hasn't played one.
Great year last year.
Yeah,
great year.
Be that as it may. I felt as if wide receiver and tackle being as deep as they are in this draft should have moved their philosophy in the draft over a little bit. We didn't get them in free agency. We might have to go to the draft now. You know what? Just roll Eliot Wolf's answer to Nicole Yang's question about the structure of the roster and whether it can support a rookie quarterback?
I do. I read a lot of that storyline. I'm not really sure what that means. We have a solid offensive line. We re-signed Mike Onwenu. We have David Andrews coming back. We have 3 rookies that we drafted last year that are developing. We signed Okorafor from the Steelers. Hunter Henry, a good running game, a solid foundation, and a solid system in place with Coach Van Pelt on the offense. So I feel like I definitely feel like we can support.
I guess, Phil, to say we have NFL players at those positions, that's not the baseline. Because you know what every guy in the NFL is?
An NFL player.
Yeah. Do you know how many of those guys are great NFL players, good NFL players, or borderline NFL players who need to be replaced? A lot of them. And the Patriots are staring at that, especially at wide receiver and tackle. So to look at this draft that's stocked with players at those positions and say, in essence, we're fine at these positions as we are. I believe in our wideouts. You haven't seen them on the field yet. You don't know whether KJ Osborne, well, he'll be fine. You don't know what KJ Osborne's going to be in this offense with this group. But you know what I mean? It's disingenuous. It's
Here. You're worked up. I get it.
It's not a good team. It's one of the worst offenses I've ever seen in my life. It's worse than it's been in 31 years here. Don't sit there and tell me that this offense is good to go.
I think they're telling you with their actions, specifically their pursuit of Calvin Ridley, that they know it's not. And I think that's a member of a team who's trying not to throw anybody who's currently on the team under the bus.
But to say you don't understand the conversation, there's 2 different philosophical ways of building a team. It's to get the quarterback and then build around him, and then in frequent instances be drafting another quarterback in 4 years or sitting on your couch while the next GM does it. Or it's to build the team around it and then parachute the quarterback in like the Eagles or the Niners or good teams have had the opportunity to do because they were already good. That's all. Don't pretend you don't understand the narrative. I'm on an empty stomach, too.
I don't think it's going to prevent them from taking a quarterback, though.
I don't think it should.
Just listen to him talk.
There's 2 different conversations,
he has said,
though.
I'm past that conversation, though. They're going to take a quarterback. So we got to get through it. We got to get past it.
That's fine. No,
the roster's not very good. If what he said today
I think that he thinks it's a good
is an
roster.
indication of the fact that he doesn't realize what's on the team right now, that's a problem. I think that's more general manager speak than anything else.
All right.
I would say this. Some very brief answers that he had, but I think are very illuminating as to what their approach will be on draft night. He was asked if the quarterback available at number 3 will be worthy of the number 3 overall selection. He said yes. And then he was asked and given specific examples of whether or not he would be okay with drafting any of those players at 3. He said yes. They're taking a quarterback. Unless they get bowled over by some absolutely obscene trade offer, which Mike Reese asked him about. Have you heard anything along those lines yet? Have you been given the bag? Have you been offered the bag? And he said no. So as things stand right now, they're going to take a quarterback. What he did say when I asked him about consensus, and you know what, John the Skull Crusher Henry, I'm going to ask for some sound now. Can you get our little back and forth about consensus early in the press conference? And there's a follow-up that I had for him too. Keep that in there.
Is it important to have consensus on a player if you're going to be drafting him at number 3 overall?
Yeah, it helps, definitely.
Do you feel it's necessary?
Among the real true decision makers, I think it is, yes.
So he said it would be nice to have consensus, Tom. When I asked if it was necessary, he said yes. He thinks so, among the primary decision makers, which would include him, Gerard Mayo. He mentioned Matt Groh. This was in a question subsequent to the ones that I asked by Greg Bedard. Bedard asked essentially, who is that small council, to use a Game of Thrones reference.
Nice, I like it.
Eliot Wolf, Gerard Mayo, Matt Groh, and then he said the way he put it was essentially the coordinator for whichever side of the ball we're talking about. So that would be obviously with quarterback Alex Van Pelt. So can you get consensus among those 4 guys as to which quarterback should be selected at number 3 overall? Again, a comment he mentioned later in the press conference, Doug Kye, Boston Herald, asked him if he felt like they were close to that, or it could have been Andrew Callahan. I'm sorry, Herald guys. And he said they haven't had those final discussions yet, but he thinks there is a general idea as to which quarterback they would be comfortable with at 3.
Okay. Now let's get into the ownership element. And I've talked in the past, and we've heard how often the Krafts have said, look, we're not involved in drafting Mac Jones. We didn't orchestrate it. I was even told, Robert, at one point said, I didn't know whether they said quarterback or cornerback. I didn't know. I couldn't hear. I don't know. We're not making the pick. All that said, Bill could operate that way, and the ownership could have said, did they say quarterback or cornerback? And I do believe that, if you have that detail. But I think if you look at that, that's a different time. That small council will have to present that to Robert Kraft. Bring it to me as Robert Kraft, and I'm gonna role play this. You as Eliot, bring it to me that the small council has made a decision.
All right, so we're gonna do a little bit of role play here.
Okay.
We do a little role play. All right.
I'm going to do Robert Kraft voice just so people understand it's a role play situation.
Okay.
All right.
It's not to be offensive in any way, shape, or form, of course. I'm going to be Eliot Wolf.
I'll be Robert Kraft.
Okay, so Robert, we just had our final meeting in terms of setting our board. And we really feel as though Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall. The information we're getting, it seems as though Jaden Daniels from LSU is probably going to go 2 overall. We like him, but he's probably going to be gone.
Fair enough.
At number 3, we've come to a consensus on this. We really feel as though Drake May is the pick at 3 overall. We want to keep you looped in. It's your football team, but we feel strongly this guy's going to help us compete not only to make the postseason, but to eventually make a Super Bowl in his career. We think he could be that good. So we just wanted to make sure you're in the loop on that.
So my team collaborated, reached consensus, and brought me its decision.
That's right. And listen, the consensus isn't necessarily facility-wide, but
I'm not going to hear from people saying this is a mistake and I didn't want that.
I can't guarantee that. But the people who matter most to you and matter most to me, Gerard Mayo, Matt Groh, Alex Van Pelt, our offensive coordinator, we came together and we felt as though Drake May is the best guy. Does everybody in the building feel that way? Maybe not. But those are the minds that matter most. And after all the time we've spent on this, we feel as though that should be the pick.
Well, this feels good. I like being looped for a change. And, Drake reminds me of another guy whose name began with a DR. Drew.
Oh,
Drew.
Yeah. He's a little more athletic than Drew, but I could see that. Strong arm, big, stand tall in the pocket. Yeah, tough. You're going to like all those things about Drake May.
Fair enough.
So here's scenario number 2. I'm going to be Eliot Wolf again. Okay, Robert, I just got off the horn with Minnesota, and we have a trade scenario that we really feel like is worthy of accepting here. But I want to come to you because the number 3 overall pick, we're talking about a franchise quarterback potentially this year. You need to be looped in. The trade would be we give away number 3 overall. We get their 2 first-round picks. Minnesota has 2, 11 and 23, as well as a 2025 first-round pick, as well as, this is why we really think this is worthy of consideration, their starting left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, who is a really good young player. He's not necessarily a first-team All-Pro. He's not Trent Williams. But this guy's going to play left tackle for us tomorrow, and we're going to feel really good about him being there.
Wow. Now, wait a minute.
Okay.
I wanted a top-flight quarterback. I said that to the guys and the girls at the owners' meetings. We still going to be able to secure one of those? Because this is the bag.
This is the bag, as Gerard mentioned. Here's why we feel as though we're going to still be able to get a top-rate young quarterback. Will it be a quarterback that we feel as strongly about as the guy who we think is going to go 3 overall, Drake May? Maybe not. But as I just told the local media the other day, we feel as though there are essentially 6 first-round quarterbacks worthy of being taken in the first round this year.
So Penix?
Could be Michael Penix Jr. It could be Bo Nix from Oregon, who's going to be more of a distributor, more of a point guard. We're going to get some playmakers around that guy, and we're going to let him distribute and do his thing. Michael Penix is a big-armed player who's going to be able to throw down the field. We're going to have to build around this player, whoever it is. It's available to us at number 11 overall. So whoever it is, we're going to have to build around him, Robert. But the return is worthy of the drop-down in terms of the potential quality of the quarterback. Again, we think these guys are first-rounders.
Do you think you got these guys locked down at wide receiver and tackle and whatever else you're going to do throughout? Because I know how hard you work. You've been thorough. You collaborated. But we got to hit. We can't have a Keneal situation.
Right. I understand what you're saying. Well, the Darisaw situation, with him being involved in this sort of trade is taking care of tackle for us. We have him. We have Mike Owenu. We're good on that front. Receiver, we feel as though it's so deep in this year's draft, we'll be able to get a quarterback with 11 or 23, and then we can use that other first-round pick on a receiver and feel like we're getting a really strong player there. We still have our second-round pick, number 34 overall, Robert. There are going to be players there as well. So if we didn't feel like we could handle a lot of our openings on our roster with this kind of deal, we wouldn't do it. But it's so strong. They're so desperate for this quarterback. I think we have to do it.
You better get this right, because I do not want to earn this status as a third overall selector ever again. And if you don't get it right, you won't be making the next pick up here at number 3.
I understand that. But just to be clear, you're not telling me not to make the trade.
Do it! All right. Again, just to give people a sense.
That was you illustrating that Robert Kraft, in your opinion, is not going to be.
That's how it's going to be.
No.
In my estimation, that has been cobbled together over years of covering the team, understanding how Robert Kraft wants his role to be viewed, so you can only go on what you're told by an individual. This is my role. This is how I do it. This is my interest. This is how it's going to work. So I'm going to go with what we in the media have been told. I'm going to allow my people to do their business, and then in turn, I will hold them accountable, which is what he said at the Gerard Mayo introductory press conference.
Okay, before we get out of here, just to put a bow on this.
Yeah.
You have Robert Kraft at the owners' meetings who says he wants a top-rate quarterback. You have Eliot Wolf who says there's a quarterback who's going to be worthy of that third overall pick, and that he's comfortable with the top 4 guys. They're going to be taking a quarterback unless they're completely bowled over by a trade. Did he say anything today that would suggest to you that it's going to be either Drake May or J.J. McCarthy? Did we get any sort of illuminating tidbits from him in that regard today?
I don't think there was any tell at all. But I'll say this. In the context of his answer, that it's an NFL offense and they did enough and they don't have to draft for need, which, again, is just mind-blowing. If that's the case, then I would think that J.J. McCarthy might be the better fit, because he can plug and play more readily than Drake May.
Hands on 10 and 2. Take our NFL roster to NFL
and I'm not saying
success.
from week 1, but maybe from week 8 when the team's 1-7.
He also did mention Jacoby Brissett. He was asked about Jacoby Brissett, and he said one of the reasons why he's a good acquisition for them is that if they do take a quarterback number 3 overall, he could lend a helping hand.
It's probably the best evidence, too. When we talk about what are they going to do, are they going to trade down? They bought a donut. If we're going to use a car reference. Jacoby Brissett is the donut spare. And they've got the real tire on order.
But might that suggest Drake May, because they're willing to
get a Pirelli,
get somebody who's not necessarily ready to go right now. It's going to be somebody who's going to need some development, as opposed to maybe the higher floor guy, J.J. McCarthy.
I don't.
The Baker Mayfield answer is interesting to me too, because it would have been fascinating to hear him say something along the lines of, "Yeah, at the time, he brought a lot to the table." I would say he wouldn't even have to mention Lamar Jackson's name or Josh Allen's name. He didn't mention Josh Allen's name. I found that interesting. But he could have said something along the lines of, at the time, he brought so much to the table that we really appreciated from an intangible perspective. But, man, there are some freaks playing that position in today's game, specifically in our conference. And where we might have gotten that one wrong is not valuing the high-level, high-end, high-potential traits at that position. The mind matters. The character matters. The leadership matters at that position, no question, and it still does to me. But you also have to be able to do some ridiculously athletic things at that position. That hasn't always been the case. And so maybe that's where my mind has evolved when it comes to this position in the last 5 years. He could have very realistically said something like that.
Okay, then. Who's the better athlete, Drake May or J.J. McCarthy? who can be more electric with their legs and do those things that you'd say, holy crap, what a play.
If you're talking about pure running ability, probably J.J. McCarthy. But if you're talking about
Breathtaking Mahomesian Allen throws.
off-platform, guys hanging off him in a dirty pocket, feet aren't set, falling as he throws, throwing left-handed, throwing, some of the greatest players in today's game are guys who have that creativity and the physical skill set that allows them to have that kind of creativity to make game-breaking plays.
But that's the thing is, it's not horse.
It looks like it sometimes, though.
I know. For good teams with good players, hey, it's going to be a great week. It's going to be a great week, and we are going to be loaded to the gills with content. Brian Hoyer is expected to return for us to give us an expert opinion on the quarterback position and some of these players. We're expecting that, okay? If it doesn't happen, forget I said it. Again, all voices used were done in an effort to illustrate this very important draft and things that were going to occur in said draft. So if you don't like it, blame Phil.